You know, when you picture the ultimate display of power, you usually imagine something just, well, massive.
Right, like overwhelming force.
Exactly. Like a multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier cutting through the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And when that carrier launches a strike, it is definitive. I mean, it's loud, it's precise, and it creates a massive explosion.
It's very cinematic.
Right. You see that, and you just automatically think, well, that's it. That's a victory.
Because how could it not be, right?
Exactly. But right now, the U.S. is spending an estimated $3.7 billion every 4 days.
Every 4 days. Which is just staggering.
It really is. They're spending that much to launch the most advanced weapons on Earth at Iran.
Yeah.
And historically speaking, the math says they've already lost.
Yeah.
So today, we're unpacking why the ultimate superpower keeps falling into the exact same trap.
It's really the ultimate paradox of modern warfare. I mean, when you look at it. You can have total dominance in the skies. You can have the absolute most expensive arsenal in human history. But, you know, the moment the smoke clears, you realize that blowing something up is actually the easy part.
Yeah, the easy part, because the aftermath is where it all falls apart.
Exactly.
So just to set the stage for you listening, today is April 2nd, 2026.
Right.
Which means we are roughly 2 months into Operation Epic Fury.
The ongoing U.S. military campaign against Iran.
Yeah. And if you are anywhere near a newsfeed right now, you're seeing the explosions. You can't miss them.
They're everywhere.
And if you buy gas or groceries, you are definitely feeling the economic fallout. I mean, it's hitting wallets hard.
Oh, absolutely.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to figure out how this current conflict actually fits into the broader, often really messy tapestry of American military history.
We need to see the patterns.
Right, and to uncover the driving forces behind it. So we're looking at a stack of incredibly insightful sources today,
Really good ones, yeah.
including a detailed historical analysis of U.S. conflicts over the last century and some very pointed geopolitical commentary on American interests in the Middle East.
This is going to be fascinating to get into.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. To really understand the headlines today, we actually need to rewind the clock and look at the blueprints.
We really do, because when you analyze the historical scorecard that's provided in our sources, you stop seeing random isolated wars.
Right, they aren't just one-offs.
Exactly.
Huh.
You start seeing a very distinct structural shift in how conflicts actually end.
It's like a trend line.
Yeah, a very clear one. The sources provide this table of major U.S. conflicts, and it presents this fascinating mystery.
What's the mystery?
Why did the U.S. military suddenly stop winning after 1945?
Wow. Yeah, that is the defining question, right?
It is.
Because the baseline for American military expectations, I mean,
Yeah.
what we all picture in our heads, was set by World War I and World War II.
Right, the big ones.
Those were undeniable high watermarks.
Exactly, but we really need to look at how those wars were fought.
Okay.
Take World War I,
Right.
right? From 1917 to 1918.
Okay, yeah.
The U.S. enters after German U-boats attack shipping, and the Zimmermann telegram is intercepted.
The classic textbook history.
Right, and it costs roughly 116,000 U.S. casualties.
Which is just staggering.
It is staggering, but it ends in a decisive Allied victory.
A clear win.
A totally clear win.
Yeah.
World War II, triggered by Pearl Harbor, ends the exact same way in 1945.
Yeah.
It cemented the U.S. as a global superpower. But, and this is the key, the mechanism of victory there was industrial state-on-state warfare.
Meaning what exactly? Like factory against factory?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
You bombed their factories, you depleted their national resources, and eventually the opposing state formally surrendered and signed a treaty.
I see. So there was a clear power structure.
Very clear.
You defeat the army, the leaders surrender, and you dictate the terms of the New World Order.
Do.
But as we move past the mid-20th century and the source material, it seems like that mechanism completely breaks down.
Oh, it fractures almost immediately during the Cold War.
Really? Just right away?
Yeah. Look at the Korean War from 1950 to 1953.
Okay.
The U.S. leads UN forces to support the South against the Communist North.
Right.
So you still have state militaries fighting, but now we're dealing with proxy dynamics.
It's messier.
Much messier. And the end result? Not a surrender in a capital city, but an armistice.
A ceasefire.
Exactly. A ceasefire in 1953 that leaves the peninsula divided along the 38th parallel.
With no formal peace treaty, like even today.
To this day, yeah. The sources classify this as an inconclusive stalemate.
Wow. And the breakdown of that old industrial playbook, it gets much more severe when we get to Vietnam, right?
Absolutely.
From 1955 to 1975, fought to stop the spread of communism.
Right.
But here, the U.S. wasn't just fighting an industrialized state army. I mean, they were fighting an insurgency.
Which completely changes the game, which is why the overwhelming technological and industrial advantage the U.S. had.
Which was massive.
Huge. But it didn't translate into a political victory.
Right.
The end result in Vietnam was a North Vietnamese victory in 1975, with the country unified under communist rule.
So, total loss.
Yeah, the source explicitly notes this as a failure.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
What about the Persian Gulf War in 1990 and 1991?
Okay.
Because if we're looking at the historical table, the U.S. expelled Iraqi forces from Kuwait incredibly fast.
They did. Very fast.
I mean, it was a massive, decisive, tactical win. Doesn't that prove the old playbook still works if it's just executed correctly?
That is a great counterexample. It really is.
Yeah.
But look closer at the outcome.
Okay.
Yes, the U.S. achieved a rapid tactical military victory. Kuwait was liberated.
Right.
But did it resolve the political landscape? No. Saddam Hussein remained in power.
Oh, right.
The military objective was isolated, but the geopolitical tension just festered.
It just sat there.
Exactly. And that unresolved tension is exactly what set the stage for the two longest conflicts in modern American history.
Afghanistan and Iraq.
Afghanistan and Iraq.
And those two are where the disconnect between tactical power and political reality becomes just, well, impossible to ignore.
Totally glaring.
The war in Afghanistan stretched from 2001 to 2021, 20 years.
2 whole decades.
Launched after 9/11 to topple the Taliban and al-Qaeda. And the end result, after 20 years of the world's most advanced military dropping bombs,
Yep.
a Taliban victory.
It's sobering.
The minute the U.S. withdrew in August 2021, the group regained control.
Right. And then, followed by the Iraq War from 2003 to 2011.
Yeah.
The source explicitly reminds us this was initiated under the false claim that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction.
The WMDs.
Right. The military achieved its immediate goal, regime change. Saddam's government fell.
Very quickly.
Yes, but they failed to find those WMDs.
And what happened after the government fell is the really crucial part. Because you take out the central authority, but you don't just magically replace it with a functioning democracy.
This doesn't happen overnight.
No, you create a massive power vacuum.
Yes.
Which led to years of long-term regional instability.
That power vacuum is the central mechanism we really need to understand here.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, the historical data proves that dismantling an enemy's military apparatus does not organically generate a legitimate local government.
Right.
Nation building is fundamentally different from traditional warfare.
You can't bomb a government into existence.
Exactly.
Right, so let's bring this historical context right up to the present moment.
Let's do it.
February 2026. We are 2 months into Operation Epic Fury against Iran.
Yes.
When you read the analysis in our sources, there is this massive glaring gap between what is happening tactically on the ground and what is actually being achieved politically.
Right. Tactically, the U.S. and its ally Israel are executing the operation exactly as planned.
Hitting all the targets.
Exactly. The sources state they possess undeniable technological superiority.
Right.
They are systematically degrading Iran's military infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So if your only metric for success is hitting targets, well, it looks like a win.
But, as we just established with Iraq and Afghanistan, destroying infrastructure just creates a vacuum.
A huge one.
In fact, there's a quote from the analysis that I need to read directly to you because it is the linchpin of this entire situation.
Let's hear it.
The author writes, "There is no American theory of political endgame in Iran, only a theory of destruction."
Wow.
Right. Only a theory of destruction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the exact same trap.
The exact same one.
The expert analysis points out that lacking a coherent endgame strategy isn't a new mistake.
No.
It is the defining characteristic of modern U.S. conflicts.
So it's a feature, not a bug, almost.
Yeah. Think about the historical bombing campaigns in Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
Okay.
The strategy is entirely focused on dismantling the opponent's capacity to fight.
Right, taking away their weapons.
Right. But because there's no viable blueprint for what governance looks like the day after the bombs stop falling, the tactical wins become totally meaningless.
It's a strategic illusion.
Yes.
I mean, it's like a legacy sports dynasty, like a team that won back-to-back championships in the mid-20th century,
Right, riding high.
but whose post-Cold War win rate has actually dropped below 50%.
That's a great way to put it.
So if the win rate is so low, why do we keep running the exact same play?
That is the million-dollar question. Or rather, the billion-dollar question.
Seriously. You win the battles, but you can't possibly win the war because you haven't actually defined what winning the war looks like in the first place.
Exactly.
But our sources point out that this time around with Operation Epic Fury, it's not just a lack of an endgame causing problems.
No, it's worse.
There is a fundamental, catastrophic misreading of the opponent taking place right now.
Yes. The analysis refers to this as the trap of overconfidence.
The trap of overconfidence.
Yeah. The planners of Epic Fury relied heavily on their own technological dominance,
Right.
and they severely underestimated Iranian capabilities. They just assumed Iran would be contained by traditional deterrence.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that overconfidence, the U.S. is suddenly facing a paralyzing problem of asymmetry.
Asymmetry is the key word here,
The sources detail how Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz.
which is huge.
It's one of the most critical global shipping lanes on the planet. And they aren't doing it with massive destroyer ships or stealth bombers.
No.
They are doing it with low-cost, off-the-shelf drones.
Which completely upends the traditional military calculus.
Totally.
You have U.S. defense systems designed to intercept sophisticated ballistic missiles, suddenly swarmed by cheap expendable drones.
It's wild. Let's visualize how this asymmetry actually works for a second.
Sure.
It's like a billionaire in a high-tech armored vehicle getting completely immobilized by a teenager with a handful of cheap nails.
I love that analogy.
Right. Or think of it like a massive cybersecurity DDoS attack, but happening in the physical world.
Oh, yeah. That makes total sense.
A company can have the most expensive, state-of-the-art firewall money can buy. But if a hacker programs 1 million different computers to send a tiny basic ping to that server, all at the exact same millisecond, the firewall gets overwhelmed.
It crashes.
The system crashes, not because the pings were sophisticated, but because of network saturation.
Right.
Iran is essentially DDoSing multi-billion-dollar aircraft carriers with cheap tech. They just saturate the airspace.
That is a perfect way to understand the mechanism.
It's crazy.
And the fallout of that saturation is immediate.
Immediate.
Closing the Strait of Hormuz has instantly triggered a global energy crisis.
Yep.
Which brings us to the economic reality of this asymmetry. When you have a U.S. warship forced to fire a $2 million interceptor missile
$2 million.
just to shoot down a drone that cost Iran $20,000 to build, the economic math becomes entirely unsustainable for the defender.
Which brings us back to the staggering numbers detailed in the sources.
The numbers are unreal.
The early estimates for Operation Epic Fury suggest that the U.S. spent approximately $3.7 billion in just the first 4 days of the conflict.
$3.7 billion
Yeah.
in 96 hours.
It's just hard to wrap your head around. And for you listening right now, this is why this isn't just some abstract geopolitical theory playing out on a map.
It's real life.
This is hitting you today. The energy crisis caused by the Strait of Hormuz being closed is actively spiking your gas prices.
Do you feel it at the pump?
You feel it at the pump, it's disrupting global supply chains and driving inflation on groceries.
Everything costs more.
Everything.
Yeah.
And those billions being burned through every few days, those are your tax dollars.
Yeah.
The U.S. finds itself bleeding capital to manage an asymmetrical threat with absolutely no exit strategy in sight.
And the domestic reaction really reflects that reality.
Oh, totally.
The sources highlight that polling already shows 54% of U.S. citizens oppose the war.
54%.
And we are only 2 months in.
Only 2 months. Okay, this brings us to the ultimate question.
Right.
If this military operation is bleeding billions of dollars a week, if it is already wildly unpopular with the American public, and if the military analysis explicitly confirms that there is no actual American political endgame,
Then why?
exactly why on earth are we fighting it? What is the actual motivation here?
Well, to figure that out, we have to transition to the second document in our source stack,
Let's do it.
which offers a highly critical geopolitical perspective on the underlying motivations for this conflict.
Now, our second source takes a highly critical, controversial angle on this.
Very pointed.
The author makes some very pointed claims about the political forces driving the conflict. And I want to be super clear to you listening. This is the author's perspective and analytical stance, not ours.
Right. Absolutely.
As your hosts, we're not taking sides or endorsing these views, but our job is to impartially unpack the arguments that are shaping the global conversation in our sources.
We're just the messengers here.
Exactly. So what exactly is this source arguing?
Well, the author challenges the fundamental premise of Operation Epic Fury.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Their core argument is that modern wars in the Middle East, specifically including this current conflict with Iran, are primarily fought to serve Israeli strategic interests rather than American ones.
The text is very blunt about it.
It doesn't hold back.
It claims that American military involvement in this specific operation is a direct result of Israeli pressure on U.S. policy.
It's an argument about the dynamics of the alliance.
Right.
The commentary suggests that neutralizing Iran's military infrastructure heavily benefits Israel's regional security posture.
Which makes sense.
Sure, but it offers negligible or even negative returns for domestic U.S. interests.
Wow.
The source also introduces another layer of motivation, asserting that Donald Trump may have personal business interests tied up in the conflict and the region.
So it's pointing to very specific external motivations.
Exactly.
And because of this misalignment of motivations, the author concludes this section with a very stark prediction.
A really bleak one.
Yeah. That ultimately, Americans will emerge from this conflict as the losers.
This raises an important question.
Okay.
If we take this author's geopolitical perspective and overlay it onto the hard military data we unpacked earlier, it actually creates a cohesive, if cynical, explanation for all the chaos.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. In the first half of our deep dive, the military analysis concluded that there is no American theory of political endgame in Iran.
Right. We established that.
The author of the geopolitical source is essentially saying, well, of course there is no American endgame, because the war was never designed to serve American strategic goals in the first place.
Ah, I see how those two sources snap together.
Right.
The argument is that the U.S. military, the aircraft carriers, the tech, the massive funding, is essentially being utilized as a tool to achieve external objectives.
It's a very expensive tool.
Yes. Whether those objectives belong to an allied nation like Israel or tied to the personal business interests of a political figure. And because the ultimate goals aren't rooted in a long-term benefit for the American public, the U.S. is left holding the bag.
The bag of debt, really.
Right. They pay the $3.7 billion every few days, they absorb the shock of the energy crisis, and they deal with the domestic blowback of a really unpopular war.
Precisely. That is the synthesis of the argument.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. The tactical might and the financial burden are entirely American.
Right.
But the political strategy is that why behind the destruction is not originating from a place of American domestic benefit.
Wow.
Therefore, the long-term outcome inherently leaves the American public at a loss.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
We've traced a century of military history. We've broken down the mechanics of how cheap drones can just paralyze billion-dollar defense networks. And we've unpacked a really controversial perspective on the political motivations driving the current war.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. For you listening, the defining lesson of the last 100 years is that overwhelming military might and undeniable technological superiority are completely hollow if they aren't attached to a realistic, achievable political strategy.
The history is unequivocal.
Totally clear.
From the proxy wars in Vietnam to the power vacuums of Iraq and Afghanistan, and now to the airspace of Iran.
It's a straight line.
The data proves that dismantling a nation's military infrastructure does not build a stable government. It just creates chaos.
The old math equation of the biggest explosion wins is officially broken.
It doesn't work anymore.
It is a strategic illusion. The paradox of modern power is that technological superiority has actually become a liability.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. When your defense systems are so incredibly expensive that you literally cannot afford to use them against a swarm of cheap, expendable targets, you haven't built a better military. You've built a fragile one.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder, something that builds on everything we've synthesized today.
What's that?
If traditional superpowers have a modern success rate of less than 50%, and if their trillion-dollar state-of-the-art militaries can be brought to a complete standstill by off-the-shelf drones and asymmetric tactics, are we witnessing the end of the superpower era altogether?
Oh, wow.
Is the whole concept of a traditional overpowering military empire officially obsolete?
It is a terrifying but fascinating question.
It really is.
The rules of the game have fundamentally changed. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the headlines, keep looking for the patterns, and we'll see you next time.